I'm now happy to announce that there will be no income tax payable up to income of 12 lakh rupees. I propose to, 1, remove 7 tariff rates. This is over and above the 7 tariff rates removed in 23-24 budget. The revised estimate of the fiscal deficit is 4.8% of the GDP.
ये बजट एक फोर्स मल्टीप्लायर है. ये बजट सेविंग्स को बढ़ाएगा, इन्वेस्टमेंट को बढ़ाएगा, कंजम्पशन को बढ़ाएगा और ग्रोथ को भी तेजी से बढ़ाएगा.
ये भारत सरकार का बजट है कि बिहार सरकार का बजट है? आपने बिहार के अलावा किसी और प्रदेश का नाम सुना वित्त मंत्री जी के पूरे बजट भाषण में?
The infrastructure is not going for the rest of the country. It's only going towards Bihar because we all know that this year is the Bihar election. So basically, for essence, and Maharashtra has been ignored, and Tamil Nadu, there's not a single word for Tamil Nadu or for any other southern states.
Tax sweeteners for the middle class, a firm footing on fiscal consolidation and continuity on capex. Finance Minister Nirmala Sitharaman's 8th consecutive budget aims to give a fillip to consumption by putting money in the hands of the middle class. Also, as they say, no news is good news for the market, so status quo being maintained there on capital gains tax, as was expected. The big headline is the change in income tax slabs. The government will forego 1 lakh crore rupees in direct tax revenue this year on account of providing that fillip. Joining us now on the program, Sriram Balasubramanian, economist and author of the book Dharmanomics, and Kunal, the co-founder of Acevector. Sriram, let me come to you. As I was pointing out, clear priority on consumption, continued focus on capex, and of course, sticking with the fiscal consolidation roadmap. Sum up the budget for us.
Thanks, Shereen. Thanks for having me. Indeed, I think they've struck a very good balance. The entire tax breaks have been calibrated very well. They've been, in fact, targeted. Very few people are talking about it because the number of people below 12 lakhs is a large section who actually are part of the so-called middle class. So it's a huge relief and a boost, I think, for the middle class. Though it's belated, I think it's been calibrated very well. And of course, I think it's very important that the fiscal, deficit is maintained, and then the fiscal plan that we had post-COVID is also retained. Because note that in many countries, and also in India in the past, when such tax breaks are given, that there's a toss on the macroeconomic picture. And in this particular case, I think strong macroeconomic fundamentals and the program or the plan to retain that picture is also very impressive. And I think it's also important to understand that the real game is probably in the next few months of how much of these savings are actually going to be transferred to consumption. And I think that's where the next part of the budget, the entire deregulation and the entire sort of regulatory upheaval, the commission that's been formed, is very important, because a lot of these savings can either go to resolving some of the debts that individual has, or investment, or they could still stay in the bank account. So it's important for policymakers to sort of transfer this potential consumption because of these savings into actual consumption. And I think a lot of the follow-up policies also seem to enable such transfer of consumption. Professor K.V. Subramanian's assessment, who was earlier in your show, alludes to almost 2.7% of an increase in GDP because of these moves, with a consumption multiplier above 5. Even if we take a lower number, say a consumption multiplier of about 4, we would still get about 2.5%. Of a direct impact on GDP. And of course, there are a lot of indirect effects, a lot of sectors which will benefit because of this, because of this, consumption boom. So I think overall it's a very calibrated, very mature budget. And I feel it addresses a wide range of areas, and it is done in a very proactive manner. I think, lastly, the finance minister deserves a lot of credit. Honorable Finance Minister, she's been under a lot of pressure for many years, and this is her 8th consecutive budget. So I think she deserves a lot of credit for really going the mile and trying to create a sort of a consumption boom in this country.
Well, that is right. It is the 8th consecutive budget delivered by Finance Minister Nirmala Sitharaman. Kunal, let me come to you now. There's plenty there as far as startups are concerned and for the startup ecosystem. What's your big takeaway? How does this move the needle?
Yeah, thanks, Shereen. Thanks for having me. Look, we're a startup nation, and I think this was a startup budget in many ways. I feel that amongst other things, which we'll talk about, but the biggest needle mover is the replenishment of the 10,000 crore fund of funds. I remember 10 years ago, I was actually in the room when the fund of funds was actually announced. And a lot of people sort of rolled their eyes saying, I don't think anything was going to come out of this. This is right when this government had first been elected in 14. And 10 years later, 140 venture capital funds got seeded by this fund of funds. And as a result of this 10,000 crores, it ended up being, using the Honorable Prime Minister's words, proved to be a big force multiplier. And as a result, 91,000 crores got raised by these domestic venture capital firms, which then invested all this money in domestic startups. So imagine the kind of impact this has had on the startup ecosystem. And for the government to realize the impact that has had and making sure that this was not a one and done scheme, they've replenished it. And I actually hope this gets deployed not in 10 years, but in 3 to 5 years, and they replenish it again, because this can be an enduring track for seeding the bedrock of domestic venture capital in India, which still accounts for a minority of investments in the Indian startup ecosystem. And if you want to be not subject to the vacillations of global financial markets and global funding winters that then thereafter impact our startup ecosystem, we need that strong domestic capital bedrock. So I feel that's a big one. The second one, which is also in the realm of capital, but of a different kind of capital, which is the credit guarantee scheme being up from 10 crores to 20 crores. A lot of MSMEs and a lot of startups are in the realm of MSMEs when they start up. They don't have the, sometimes the wherewithal or the state of business to acquire equity capital, and they need to raise debt. And this increase of limit will really help them to get the money they need to set up a manufacturing facility, buy the raw materials, or pay for the inventory that they need to create. So overall, this is a phenomenal budget for the startup ecosystem, and I think it should really push us forward in the right direction.
Comment as well on what the budget has said as far as gig workers are concerned, kind of moving that economy more towards formalization with the benefits that were announced. Kunal, what does that mean now for the gig economy?
Yeah, absolutely. First and foremost, I think it's an explicit appreciation of the fact that the new age service economy is such an integral part of Indian society and economy and the financial system, where now suddenly the finance minister has to acknowledge the fact that, look, there are millions of people being employed by the sector who need a social security net and identification for maybe security reasons or other reasons as well. I think it's testament to the impact that the startup ecosystem is having on our country, and I think it's a welcome move, because I'm sure the gig worker and the community of gig workers would really appreciate this movement.
Yes, they most certainly will. Sriram, a final word from you. The single biggest highlight as far as the budget is concerned.
I think the single biggest highlight, in my view, would be I would say the balance that the budget has. I think ensuring that macroeconomic fundamentals are not affected, but yet providing the impetus for entrepreneurs, like you mentioned, for the startup community, for consumers, and to have a consumer relief for people so that they invest back into the economy. I think the thrust has sort of moved and the needle has shifted for people to be motivated to spend more. So I think I would define it, as the budget with the right balance and doing things the right way. I mean, there was in this, especially in the tax realm, I think they've really gone the full mile instead of not doing it halfway. Because if you really want a consumption boom, I think it has to be done in a targeted and in a much more, big bang way.
Right.
And I think that's how.
Absolutely, and certainly much more than what was expected. That is what the finance minister has delivered there as far as the personal income tax cuts are concerned. Sriram and Kunal, many, many thanks for joining us on a big day here at the CNBC TV18 Budget Headquarters. Appreciate your time. This is a startup budget. That's the word coming in from Kunal. Bahl. Sriram calling it a balanced budget that boosts consumption. But let's go across to the biggest banker in the country, SBI Chief C.S. Setty, speaking with Ritu on what the budget does for the banking sector, for credit offtake and perhaps for deposit mobilization.
In terms of the budget and what it has done, how is your overall reading as to what it will do for economic growth and, more importantly, credit growth for banks?
Thanks, Ritu, for having me on your show. It's a very good budget. My simple assessment is I think it ticks a lot of boxes, both in terms of, as you mentioned, growth, economic growth as well as credit growth, which are both interlinked anyway, in terms of investment, in terms of MSMEs, agriculture.
Yeah.
I think most of these areas are well covered in the budget. But a few things I definitely would like to draw your attention. One is on the macros. The numbers seem to be conservative. If you see nominal GDP of 10.1, which they are estimating, which means that the real GDP is estimated at 6%. I'm sure it will be much more than that.
Okay.
And the tax buoyancy is at 1.1, which is in tune with what has been achieved.
Yeah.
So the macro numbers seem to be conservative.
Okay.
And as far as capex is concerned, again, something what I've been hearing.
A 10% increase.
But if you really see, we were just looking at the budget numbers. It's not only about 11.2 lakh crores, which they mentioned. If you take the grants which are given to the states for capital purposes, and the capital investment with the public sector, our estimate is the total capex would amount to 19.8 lakh crores.
What would something like 19.8 lakh crores in terms of capex do for banks in terms of credit boost?
No, it would. See, the usual credit growth is that if you're assuming, even on a conservative basis, 10% nominal GDP, you add 4 to 5% to that credit growth. So the credit growth is not only coming from the infra, it definitely would come from the KCC, for example, with the limit has been enhanced.
To 5 lakh.
5 lakh with under the subvention scheme, which means that a lot of farmers who were eligible otherwise were not taking these loans because subvention was not available. Now the limit being increased would definitely be a positive.
Sure.
And the MSME also, while we witnessed a good credit growth in the last 2 years, is almost 14 to 15% across the banking system. A couple of things what we were witnessing is that while the limits, capex, the plant and machinery limits were revised a few years ago, still people were thinking that to achieve certain growth rate, the limits had to be revised. In this budget, they have revised 2.5 times on the plant and machinery investment, and also on the revenue side also is 2 times. So in all, I think credit growth looks to be positive for the banking industry.
Lots of things that you mentioned, sir, but let me get to some of the specifics. You said credit growth will be assuming a nominal GDP growth rate of 10% plus 4% for the industry. So assuming this 10.14% for SBI, for FY26, what kind of credit growth do you anticipate, keeping everything in mind that you just talked about?
You have to wait for a week when we come with the results.
But
obviously, I can't give. If the nominal GDP is there at 10%, SBI consistently have been growing 4 to 5% over the GDP.
So we'll wait till next week for the number. But the big boost really has come in that for salary up to 12 lakh rupees, no income tax, net income tax payable. What will that do as far as retail credit growth is concerned? More money in the hands of people? Does it necessarily mean they may be more open to borrowing?
Before we go to the credit growth, I think we should look at the deposits, which we have been talking, the banking system is struggling to get the deposits. Our estimate is this definitely will boost the savings because there's a surplus in the hands of people. One is the direct benefit to the deposits. Part of that probably will go to the investments also. There's another element on the TDS for the senior citizen from 50,000
to 1 lakh.
The senior citizen deposit constitute 20% of the banking system deposits.
Yes.
And, the TDS also is one of the reasons why some of the senior citizens don't want to keep in the bank. And that would add definitely to the banking deposit. So a combination of increased tax exemption as well as, in the TDS exemption limit increased, add to the deposits. Then on the credit side, obviously, most of the personal credit is determined by the net monthly income to EMI to NMI.
Yeah.
How much
How
EMI
much of your income you're paying as EMI.
So obviously, when the denominator increases, the scope for
higher EMI
is there, and that would definitely boost the consumption. In fact, the consumption, our economic research department tells that the consumption multiplier is 3 times.
Okay.
Which is not about 12 lakhs contributing to equivalent amount or net savings or net surplus contributing to the consumption. The net surplus will have 3 times leading to the consumption. So this consumption multiplier is also very important to determine.
So could you put some numbers to what this will mean for SBI in terms of deposit boost and of course credit boost?
So we assume that the credit boost, as I said, I think is a combination of everything what is going to happen and which crystallizes into the GDP growth rate and adds to the credit growth rate. The deposits, I think broadly most of the banks will move to the double deposit growth rate. Is they already there? I can't put a figure to that, but obviously it's a positive to the deposit mobilization.
The other big focus area of this budget has been MSMEs, whether that is the reclassification of MSMEs, so bringing more of them into the fold, and also enhancement of the guarantee cover, which has been doubled to 10 crore rupees.
Yes.
To put that together, how much additional credit do you think it would unlock? How many more customers will you now be able to serve?
So one is the credit guarantee definitely would help in terms of moving from a collateralized lending to a cash flow based lending backed by the guarantee. Today, I think most of the banks are moving towards, you have a lot of information on the MSME, you have GST data, you have income tax data, but still the focus on the collateral is there.
Yeah.
Probably, this increased limit for the guarantee combined with the cash flow assessment which is available will increase the flow of credit to MSMEs. If we assume that the growth rate is 15%, we can definitely add 3 to 4 percentage points to this growth rate.
Okay, and the number of SMEs that will increasingly become eligible because of the reclassification?
So, in terms of the universe of MSMEs, when I look at our SBI portfolio, out of 1.6 million MSMEs whom we serve, 90% are micro enterprises. Correct. And some of the medium enterprises today are not classified as SME category. They are directly going to the corporate segment.
I see.
So some of them probably will join the medium, and some of the small will now become micro.
Okay.
Which means that the universe gets readjusted, and some of the large corporates, which we are classifying as mid and large corporate, will come into medium enterprises.
Okay, you mentioned the Kisan credit card enhanced limit, but what it also comes with is the credit card with a 5 lakh limit for micro enterprises. How significant is that move going to be for the segment?
It is important in the sense that most of the working capital limits given by the banks are required to be renewed every 12 months.
Yeah.
So, but if you have a credit card with a longer eligibility or validity of the credit card, this problem of, operational problem of coming to the bank every year, or banks doing every year, I think this was a long time ago recommended, and I'm happy that this has become realized.
All right, joining us right now is Commerce Minister Piyush Goyal to speak to us about Union Budget 2025, the big push supporting the middle class, startups and the manufacturing sector. Mr. Goyal, how do you think this budget fares in terms of giving more consumption power back to the middle class, because that had been a pain point over the last few quarters?
Well, it's a very transformational budget. It's balanced. Continuity is evident in the budget, but very strategic in its outlook. It has it has planned a vision very holistically. Now the benefits given to the middle class. It straight away results in money in the pocket of the middle class. India has a very rapidly growing middle class with 25 crore poor having come out of multidimensional poverty. You are rapidly seeing more and more people with increasing incomes. Their disposable income becomes much bigger, savings of up to 1 lakh of rupees for all those who are earning up to 25 lakh rupees. And for those who are in a job at 12,75,000 rupees salary, you have zero income tax. I think it's a very, very big message that so far the government had focused on investment-led growth. Now we will have investment-led and consumption-led growth.
When it comes to duty, sir, we've got the new administration in the US and they have threatened tariffs. They've started with, of course, Canada and Mexico. They will go to China, and the feeling is they will impose tariffs on India as well. How are you gearing up, and how is that budget, how is this budget making India tariff ready?
Please don't go by feelings expressed by a few people. We have the courage of conviction that our friendship, our relationship with the United States is time-tested. Prime Minister Narendra Modi and President Trump share very deep bonds of friendship. He knows that India is a trusted partner of the United States of America. At the same time, we are wanting to work even closer with the United States of America to expand our relationship, whether it's on bringing back illegal immigrants, whether it's on making sure that American goods get a fair tariff regime in India which does not hurt their business interests, and simultaneously Indian exports to America also get equal opportunity. Whether it's our effort which we had started during the first Trump administration also to increase a lot of goods from America which we need. I mean, crude oil, gas, we require it. And I must say, Honorable President Trump is thinking in the right direction of bringing down energy costs, bringing down cost of crude oil, bringing down cost of gas. All of this will be great news for the Indian economy.
And there's an FTA on the table also, the trade deal?
Well, we will have discussions with our counterparts and with Honorable President Trump. And I'm very confident that we will strike a very balanced, very forward-looking partnership which could include different types of trading arrangements. We are looking for a very robust and a very strong partnership with the United States.